gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare amongst the stinging air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
The latest news from the land of the stars.
A wedding of two Hollywood film stars, Dick Powell and Joan Blondell. And what a happy day for the couple. Dick is singing all the time now. Do you blame him? Good luck and best wishes. It's here at last. Shirley Temple's pony arrives from the Shetland Islands. It was given to her by Joseph Schenck to commemorate her 3rd anniversary in pictures. Signed, sealed, and delivered, and Shirley renames him Spunky because he isn't afraid of anything. Well, Shirley, it looks like you're going to take your riding seriously and regularly. You're fond of him, and he likes you. You should be great pals. Carrots are his favorite dish. They might even be yours. But there's one thing you can teach him: how to tap dance.
The German invading force is speeding to capture Oslo. The blow against Norway is launched. Warships loaded with troops, which they are to land. Soldiers wearing life belts, should the vessel be sunk in battle. The naval squadron drives through the waters of the Skagerrak for the surprise attack that transformed the war in Europe. These newsreel pictures are as permitted by the German censorship and were flown across the Atlantic by clipper ship. They show history moving to a fitful climax. They know they're in danger of attack. There is an attack by a British warplane and aircraft fire. They shoot a stream of tracer shells. The squadron steams on and into the fjord of Oslo. Mere hours before, Berlin demanded of Denmark and Norway that they yield to German control. Denmark did yield, but Norway refused. Norway would resist. Oslo, on a steep and rocky fjord, was strongly situated for defense. But defense was demoralized. There are reports of treachery, secret agent plotting, fifth column, and Trojan horse tactics. There was some fighting, and Nazi ships were sunk, but not enough resistance to prevent the Germans from landing and swiftly seizing Oslo. From the harbor, a Nazi seaplane flies on some mission of war. The Norwegian capital made to serve as a German air base. The unloading of troops and supplies illustrates with what thoroughness the surprise invasion was prepared. Heavy equipment, tanks, modern weapons, mechanized war to be waged with motorized speed, a new blitzkrieg to be launched by those battalions seizing a neutral nation. Headed by a regimental band, a goose-stepping parade. Simultaneously, other Norwegian ports are seized in much the same fashion. The sudden Nazi blow captures the important Norwegian harbors and air bases, putting the Allied counterattack under a grave handicap, giving the Nazi invaders a strategic advantage in the Norwegian war. Historic events are being shaped by these scenes in Oslo. They take their places in the circling chairs for a glimpse into the future. At the New York World's Fair, what things will look like 20 years hence. Highways and horizons of 1960. We move around a vista of roads, a bridge between mountains where the highway is truly high. Traffic lanes regulated at varying rates of speed, and the way they emerge from a tunnel. Across the bridge, the stream of automobiles in reproduced clever miniature, and the highway takes us into the city of the future. This is the vision that architects and engineers have summoned of the metropolis soon to come.
The two glamour debs of this year and last welcome the guests. There's Mrs. George Washington Cavanaugh, escorted by Prince Falco and Prince Filiberto de Bourbon. And we see Countess de Santa Cruz and Maurice de Cobra. Glamour debs Josephine Johnson and Patricia Plunkett say hello to another deb, Nancy Martin. What's the social occasion for this swanky gathering? Oh, there are Rita Meyer and Thomas Murray, Jr. What's the gala event at the 9 o'clock club in New York? They're acclaiming the debutantes selected for glamour this year. At a table is Barbara Smith and Donald Livingston. All the younger set is here. Paul Livermore and Rosemary Bradley. The glamour deb is a recent and interesting innovation in the nightclub set. Susan Stevenson and Peter Bogle come to see the glamorizing ceremony. Also, Leah Dobson-Eddy and Xavier Benziger. Elizabeth Provost and Richard Proctor. Society is agog. The social register is aflutter as Patricia Plunkett, who was acclaimed last season, presents to Josephine Johnson the bouquet that makes her the glamour deb of 1940.
What General Weygand has called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. Upon it depends our own British life and the long continuity of our institutions and our empire. The whole fury and might of the enemy must very soon be turned on us. Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. If we can stand up to him, all Europe may be freed, and the life of the world may move forward into broad, sunlit uplands. But if we fail, then the whole world, including the United States, including all that we have known and cared for, will sink into the abyss of a new dark age, made more sinister and perhaps more protracted by the lights of perverted science. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duty, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its commonwealths last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour. Mete out to the Germans the measure, and more than the measure, they have meted out to us. We will have no truce or parley with you or the grisly gang who work your wicked will. You do your worst, and we will do our best.
He was a young state senator, then Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Next, we see him swimming with small infantile paralysis patients, he himself stricken by that malady. He headed a nationwide fight against infantile paralysis, and the Warm Springs Foundation in Georgia was his favorite place of recreation. In spite of the physical handicap, he continued to progress in public affairs. He became governor of New York and then was nominated for the presidency on the Democratic ticket. He was elected and inaugurated.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
The banks closed. President Roosevelt taking financial measures against the Depression. Social Security founded as he instituted a series of New Deal reforms. A vast program of public works to relieve unemployment. The president here starting the operation of the Norris Dam. His first two administrations concentrated on the battle against the Depression.
We have survived all of the arduous burdens and the threatened dangers of a great economic calamity. Fear is vanishing, and confidence is growing on every side.
With his grandchildren, he was infinitely human, a lover of laughter and of the out of doors. His fishing trips were famous. But the dark peril of war was looming with Jap and Nazi aggression. Franklin D. Roosevelt foresaw the peril to freedom, democracy, and universal peace.
I have seen war. I have seen war on land and sea. I have seen blood running from the wounded. I have seen men coughing out their gassed lungs. I have seen the dead in the mud. I have seen cities destroyed. I have seen 200 limping, exhausted men come out of line, the survivors of a regiment of 1,000 that went forward 48 hours before. I have seen children starving. I have seen the agony of mothers and wives.
With his mother in the days when there was hope that another world war might be averted. Mrs. Rose, the visit of the British sovereigns to the United States increased British-American friendship. The warships of the fleet reviewed by the President. American sea power becoming the more important with the outbreak of the European War. And in Canada, with the Dominion at war, the President declared a fundamental American policy.
I give to you assurance that the people of the United States will not stand idly by if domination of Canadian soil is threatened by any other empire.
The Lend-Lease Bill signed, aid for Britain in the war against Nazi Germany, armament for all who fought against aggressors, and American opposition to Hitlerism was formulated at the first meeting of President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Winston Churchill on a warship in the Atlantic. America sought to restrain Jap aggression, and President Roosevelt, whom we see attending church there, conducted patient negotiations. Then Pearl Harbor, and in Congress, the American declaration of war against Japan.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States .
Casablanca, and at another Roosevelt-Churchill conference, the President reviewed American troops in the North. American part in the overthrow of Nazi Germany has begun. Tehran Conference, the participation of Stalin making it the Big Three. Then the President and General MacArthur in a Pacific War Conference attended by Admiral Nimitz. As the nation's war leader, President Roosevelt won a 4th term and took the oath of office. His new administration began with victory in sight, and he emphasized post-war world organization to preserve peace. The Yalta Conference in the Crimea was the climax of the great international meetings in which Franklin D. Roosevelt played an historic part. Here, final plans for victory and world organization for peace were made by the Big Three, Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin, the diplomatic pinnacle in the career of America's war president. King Farouk of Egypt, as the president returning from the Crimean Conference, conferred with Oriental potentates. Ibn Saud, Lord of the Desert. His last public appearance, reporting to Congress.
I come from the Crimea Conference with a firm belief that we have made a good start on the road to a world of peace. And I am confident that the Congress and the American people will accept the results of this conference as the beginnings of a permanent structure of peace, upon which we can begin to build in which our children and grandchildren, yours and mine, the children and grandchildren of the whole world, must live and can live.
American delegation to the San Francisco Conference of the United Nations. The news was heralding victory, and on that day, the victory president died at his favorite Warm Springs. Vice President Harry S. Truman becomes president. He takes office in a crisis of history, when world war must be followed by an organization for world peace. President Truman announces that he will follow Franklin D. Roosevelt's policies and help bring to realization the Franklin Delano Roosevelt dream of world peace.
Yesterday morning at 2:41 a.m. at General Eisenhower's headquarters, General Jodl, the representative of the German High Command, and of Grand Admiral Dönitz, the designated head of the German state, signed the act of unconditional surrender of all German land, sea, and air forces in Europe to the Allied Expeditionary Forces and simultaneously to the Soviet High Command. Hostilities will end officially at 1 minute after midnight tonight, Tuesday, the 8th of May. We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing. Today is Victory in Europe Day. Long live the cause of freedom. God save the King.
Gliders, the Army's silent wings, play their part. An airstrip near Mekchilla, and the Jap lines only 3 miles away. The Japs themselves were a lot nearer. Snipers pestered the airstrip from a few hundred yards range.
Time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima.
Tokyo admits extensive damage caused by the atomic bomb at Hiroshima. New air attacks have been thrown against Japan. Washington and other Allied capitals are buzzing with speculation about the new bomb and its possibilities. Now here's Alan Jackson with a CBS feature, News of the World.
Almost 24 hours have passed since we first learned of the atomic bomb and its use against the city of Japan. And even now, after hearing many times the description of this new weapon, its capabilities continue to tempt human imagination. Our senses reel in awe from the staggering import of this new advancement in science. Words written and spoken on the subject since the announcement first came from President Truman about 11 o'clock yesterday morning already are encyclopedic in volume. And yet the subject grows more interesting and fantastic with each new detail, however minute. What this new discovery can mean for a peacetime world, even though its commercial possibilities lie years, if not generations ahead, is almost beyond the comprehension of mere humans. One bomb has been tested, and results were noted for hundreds of miles around. One bomb has been dropped on a Japanese city. So far, headquarters hasn't been able to determine the amount of damage caused, or photographic planes that flew over the ill-fated town of Hiroshima several hours later still were unable to pierce the heavy pall of smoke and dust that clouded out that particular spot of Japan. Tokyo Radio this morning finally acknowledged the use of the atomic bomb against Hiroshima and admitted that extensive damage was done. Apparently, the damage was so great that the Japs aren't sure yet what hit the place, for they speak of bombs in the plural, though headquarters tells us that only one bomb was dropped. And a few moments ago, the Japanese Domei news agency in another broadcast from Japan said that the atomic bomb was dropped by parachute and exploded in the air before reaching the ground. That's a Japanese explanation. Earlier, in an indirect reference to the amount of damage caused, the Japs announced that all railroad service in the Hiroshima area had been canceled. Well, that, at the moment, is about all we know of what happened when the atomic bomb landed in Hiroshima, Japan. More figures and revealing descriptions of the damage undoubtedly will be available.
America waited out World War II's last tense hours. At the White House, President Truman, State Secretary Burns, and Cordell Hull stood by for the momentous surrender message from the Japanese. Radio men, sound and camera crews of worldwide newsreels kept vigil with Washington reporters. Then, after tantalizing hours of rumors and guesses, came the President's historic announcement, August 14th, 1945.
I have received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government in reply to the message forwarded to that government by the Secretary of State on August 11th. I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan. In the reply, there is no qualification.
The greatest news story of all time, final unconditional surrender with the whole world waiting to celebrate VJ. In every town and hamlet across the nation, the story was the same. Chicago heard the news, and a hurricane of unrestrained hilarity blew through the windy city. This was how San Francisco greeted the news. The city by the Golden Gate engulfed in a tide of joy and relief. Here, America's major port of embarkation to the war in the Pacific, the Japanese surrender brought jubilation unrestrained. Clang, clang, clang went the trolley. The Victory Special rolled down Market Street with everybody celebrating. All were shipmates on that memorable day, and the Navy salute made it official. The victory flash electrified Times Square, keyed to the bursting point as the magic word of complete surrender came through. It was the long-awaited moment, and the lid was off. Unparalleled were the scenes as multitudes surged around Miss Liberty, throwing restraint to the winds. The world's mightiest city marked the end of World War II in one tremendous shout of joy and gladness. Snowshoes were needed to blaze a trail through streets buried in the biggest paper and ticker tape blizzard in history. Into the night, the Great White Way thundered with the exuberance of exploding emotion. Thus did VJ Day go into history.
all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut trees, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. I'll see you in that small cafe, the park across the way. The chestnut light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.